Good morning, school. Look at the images on the screen. What do you think they all have in common? Well, you may be surprised to discover that all of them have been sent by post. In 1909, two suffragettes campaigning for votes for women used the Royal Mail's same-day courier service to post themselves to 10 Downing Street so they could deliver their message personally to Prime Minister Herbert Asquith. Just a few weeks after parcel post began in 1913 in the United States, a couple named Jessie and Matilda Beagle mailed their 8-month-old son James to his grandmother, who lived just a few miles away. It cost his parents only 15 cents in postage. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, W. Reginald Bray, in a bid to test the limits of the UK postal service, successfully posted many items unwrapped, including a rabbit skull, a crocheted letter, a frying pan, a turnip, a bowler hat, his Irish terrier Bob, and he even managed to send himself on 3 separate occasions. Nowadays, Royal Mail and other carriers must follow strict laws on what can and cannot be sent by post, and of course, items have to be appropriately packaged. I'm sure that when you were younger, many of you wrote a letter to Father Christmas. Of course, you had to. How else would you have known what you wanted and your all-important address for delivery? If you were lucky, a reply would land on the doormat, causing great excitement and joy, knowing that he had taken time out of his very busy seasonal schedule to write a personal letter just for you. Amongst my many and varied pastimes outside of work here at AKS, I enjoy sending and receiving handwritten letters. In 1975, I was 11 years old, and through a pen friend agency I read about in a magazine, I began writing to Sue, a girl in America who was a year older than me. She lived in the town of Rockford in Illinois. That friendship has lasted for what will be 48 years this summer. In that time, we've exchanged hundreds of letters, cards, and on special occasions, parcels containing presents for each other. And we have met, once when I visited her, aged 17, and again when she came to stay with me back in 2016. Of all the friendships in my life, this has been the longest, and I can truly say she is a forever friend. The Royal Mail started when King Henry VIII made Sir Brian Tuke the first Master of the Posts in 1516. He was in charge of organising a system where each town in the country had to have 3 horses available to transport packets of royal letters and bring back news to the King. This was the beginning of the postal service, the Royal Mail. The first ever stamp was the penny black. It went on sale in May 1840 and unsurprisingly cost a penny to buy. The first person to send a stamp letter was Thomas Moore Musgrave. It sold at auction for more than £50,000 in 1990. Now you might think that you would need to write the whole address on an envelope for it to arrive at the correct destination. However, a German Christmas card with just England on the envelope reached the right address in Gloucestershire in 2015. Royal Mail said its address detectives were renowned, but even by their standards it was impressive for the card to be posted on a Monday and arrive 2 days later. Throughout history, ordinary people have written letters to each other. Letters of thanks, letters of love, letters expressing concern, letters of news about a forthcoming birth or marriage. Very often letters are about everyday life, what's happening at that moment in time. Sometimes letters reflect a person's thoughts on what's going on in their work, the world news, and in the case of more famous people, letters can tell us a lot about what they were feeling at the time of some of history's most notable events. Here you can see a letter written to Howard Carter, who discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun, warning him of a curse for opening the tomb. On the right is a letter written in the hand of Henry VIII, declaring his love for Anne Boleyn. And in the middle, you can see a letter warning of Guy Fawkes's gunpowder plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament. As a little girl, our late Queen Elizabeth II wrote a letter to her granny, telling her about losing a tooth and thanking her for her Christmas present. the American civil rights activist Martin Luther King wrote about his thoughts on the power of love. And Margaret Thatcher, Britain's first female Prime Minister, wrote this message of thanks following her election victory. It has become quite common recently to make the envelope that contains the letter just as interesting as its contents. This is known as mail art. You could use different fonts and calligraphy to address the envelope. Or you could get even more creative and illustrate your envelope in some weird and wonderful ways, like these colourful examples. Another example of letter writing which can inspire and support others is to get involved with a charity such as From Me to You. It was set up by friends Brian Greenley and Alison Hitchcock. Brian was diagnosed with bowel cancer, and his friend Alison started writing him letters to cheer him up. He has now recovered, and the charity they started encourages people to write letters to friends and relatives suffering from cancer. You can also donate letters, which are then distributed to people who may be suffering alone. The poet Lord Byron wrote, "Letter writing is the only device for combining solitude with good company. Sitting down and sharing your thoughts and feelings with someone you care about in a handwritten message is a mindful activity which can help you, the writer, to relax. And of course, a walk to the post office to buy a stamp will get you some exercise into the bargain." As for the recipient of the letter, well, I'm sure that they will feel the excitement you remember as a small child when you got that letter from Father Christmas. The actor Steve Carell sums it up perfectly. "My mom is the only one who still writes me letters, and there is something visceral about opening a letter. I see her on the page. I see her in her handwriting." So, what are you waiting for? Grab some paper, a pen and an envelope and write a letter to someone you care about, a distant grandparent or a friend you don't see very often. You could even be one of the first people to send a letter using the new stamps with King Charles on. Let me know when you get a reply.